So how much money have your companies generated in your lifetime?
Yeah, so the brands I've created have generated well over $1 billion.
$1 billion.
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, well, you are the founder of Loko, which was a personal favorite of mine in college. And so I really just want to kind of understand how you literally went from basically a college kid when you created it to getting these into every gas station and college town in America. So just if people don't know, how would you describe Loko?
So Four Loko was at its inception a caffeinated alcoholic beverage. So it's classified as a flavored malt beverage. We used malt, which is like beer that's removed of all the beer flavors, and then we added flavoring and at that time caffeine tornado guarana over it and created this brand. So despite popular rumors, I was not in college. It was shortly after college. I had got a job selling vodka for an earnest startup, and so. It was that saying of like learn on someone else's dime, right? I learned how the alcohol industry worked, and it's a 3-tier system. So you have to sell into a distributor who sells into a bar or a store, and then customers buy it. And so I got trained to manage 5 states in selling vodka. And then around 2004, I realized I was selling a bulk of this vodka to be mixed with Red Bull. And I guess naively, but fortunately I was that naive, I was like, I can do this better. So I should make a pre-mixed version. And so I called my 2 college buddies. One was a guy named Jeff, who's in my fraternity, and asked him if he wanted to start this thing. And he said, yeah. And then called my other buddy, Jason. He said, yeah, why not? And that was how we got started.
How did you guys go about getting it actually made?
So good question. We didn't know, right? So we have an idea. We're all in. We're going to do this. And we're like, okay, what do we do next? And we started asking around to a lot of people, like, what steps can you take? And we found out there were these things called flavor houses. They make flavoring for food and beverage. And once we found them, we had no track record, so they charged us, I think it was $10,000 at the time. And they said, we'll make you like a couple versions of whatever it is you want. Okay, great, we have that. Now, what do we want? We're like, well, we want alcohol, we want caffeine. They're like, okay, what levels? And so I was literally reading the back of a Monster can saying, okay, we want this much caffeine, because I didn't know. So, and then it's just being curious. So we asked them, well, okay, you make us the samples. How do we go get this made at scale? And we knew we couldn't buy or didn't want to buy a brewery. There were what's called co-manufacturers. And so they put us in touch with one of them and kind of navigated that, and we figured out how we could get it made.
So you got to put $10,000 in to get, like, how many did you get, like, cans, or is it just for, like, the formula?
It's just the formula.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think it was roughly $10,000, and we had 3 versions that we would get back. So we got a first round, tweak this flavor, add this, whatever it may be. They'd send us the second round, and the third one we landed on, we're like, okay, I guess this is the product. So, and it wasn't Four Loko at the time. It was called Four, and it was our first iteration.
So how long did it take you until you landed on the Four Loko, like the one we all know and love?
Yeah, it was about 2 years. So
okay.
we raised a little bit of money from friends and family, mainly Jeff and Jason's friends and family, because my family didn't have money to invest. And we did essentially everything people told us to do to launch an alcohol brand, and every one of those things was wrong. And so I look back and I'm like, I'm glad we didn't have more money, because we would have spent more money on all the wrong things that didn't drive the business, right? So after 2 years of doing that, we realized that we were on the verge of going out of business. We had hired a few people. We let them go. We took months without salary, at least my partners did. And we said we have to try something. And so we iterated and came up with this brand called 4 Max, which was just hired alcohol content and looked a little different. And it did okay. And then my partner Jeff came back from essentially a crew drive. It's where you go out and sell the product in the market with the distributor. And he said, hey, there's this product out there. It's 24-ounce can. It's 9.9% alcohol. It's selling well. We should do this. And my reaction was like, no, we should. That's too big. No one's going to be able to drink that much. But fortunately, we did, and he was right. And as soon as we put that product out, it took off.
So in those 2 years that you were iterating, like, what was the process to, like, even test if this was something that people were interested in? Like, were you just literally going to a local gas station and saying, hey, can we put these right here and see if people buy? Or, like, how would you gauge success at that small of a scale?
So you have to sell through what I was saying earlier, the 3-tier system. So we couldn't go to any gas station and just sell it unless we had a distributor in place. So the first thing was you had to convince a distributor to sell your product. And now the good thing is no distributor wants to miss the next Red Bull or whatever brand you want to pick, right? The bad news is they also sell 50,000 other products.
Yeah.
So even if you get in the distributor, it doesn't mean that they're going to spend their time focusing on your brand. So getting the distributors first, The second step is kind of doing what you're saying, which then we would go to that market because they're geographically constrained
like
markets.
local.
Local markets that they cover. And we'd go to those stores and we would pitch it ourselves, and then the distributor would deliver it. And then how we would judge success was the wrong metric. We would just judge the success by how much we were selling to the distributor, but we realized that was like a false security. We could sell in a bunch. If it's not selling off the store shelf, they're not going to reorder and you have no business, right? And we hit that wall. And so we really judged success as we learned to judge by velocity, the number of turns, the number of repeat purchases in a retailer.
Repeat purchases from the retailer or from the customer.
So we couldn't get as granular as the customer.
Yeah.
I mean, the store might tell us, hey, there's one guy that comes in here and buys this every day, right? But we didn't get to, it's not like D2C, we couldn't see.
Okay.
So by the store.
What would be like, so you would like have like 6 cases, you'd say, you gave them?
Yeah, I mean, we would sell them, so we have to sell it. You can't give away alcohol. And we usually they want to bring in one case, they want to try, and they say if it sells, our job was to make sure that we took as much space in that store as possible. We put up as much point of sale as possible so that when you walked in, there was no way you didn't know that there was this brand called Four Loko there.
Gotcha.
And they'd order one case. If they sold out in a day or a week, it was exciting. They'd reorder. If they sold out in a month, they probably weren't reordering.
So a day to a week would be like is a good sign.
Yeah.
What's a velocity metric? What's the metric that you're tracking?
So that the number of units sold in a specific time frame. So that can be day, week, month, depending on what data you get. We would try to look at it as granularly as possible, but if we could see, a case selling a week, we had a pretty good account.
Okay, so what's like the all-star print or like metric for that? Like if you were killing it?
Yeah, I think we were saying it depends, right? So there's some stores that are just high volume stores, and you've been there, right? There's some stores that just they're the Costco's, right?
Yeah.
And then if you have this little corner store that's like slowly trafficked, it just depends on if it sells well for them. So there wasn't a standard metric. What we would try to do is compare based on their sales.
Gotcha.
And often, as we got going for Loko, we might be the number one selling product in their store.
Yeah, pretty quickly. So you found that once you had the formula dialed in, it was just caffeine in a large size. That worked, and it was kind of pretty obvious from the get-go.
Yeah, I think it was a unique package as well, so it looked different.
The camouflage, the bright colors.
Exactly.
Huh. So how did you get the distributors to give you a shot?
You just need one, right?
Yeah.
So as soon as we got the first distributor with Four, the original product, we asked them about their network. And so who else distributes, at that time it was Miller and Coors in that market, right, in that state. So these guys might cover 5 counties in what's called Central Ohio. Who covers the rest of the state? And they would introduce us to the other distributors, and then there was kind of that social proof of like they're distributing it, so we should.
Was there any sales point you had to do to convince that guy, or if you liked your guys' energy? Like,
I mean, look, I think any product or company in the early days is really about you, right?
Yeah,
Your passion
how you sell it.
and how much they believe you. And so, yes, we gave all the reasons we thought it was going to work, but ultimately they were believing in us.
how'd you find him?
When I went to Ohio State, actually all 3 of us did, and I met the executive vice president of that distributor randomly. Somebody introduced us. And in college, I met a lot of people, and I kept all business cards. And so I just had his business card, and I immediately called him up and cold called him.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay. So once you guys were in your first few stores, you had that actual like clear proof that it was working. What is the scaling process to get across? Because these are all heavy. There's so many.
Yeah.
Like, what is the process to actually scale for Loko across America?
So it's different than software and digital assets, right? Like there is a lot of heavy lifting to logistically get your product in every store. And then when you go into alcohol, it's even more intense because you have that other layer of the distributor, right? So the number one thing we had to do to scale nationally was we had to get distributors in every county across the entire country. And so fortunately for us, there were 3 of us. We divided the country in 3. We used kind of our network in the different states, and we asked them what distributors we should talk to. And when we got a little bit more sophisticated, we evaluated the options. You had the Anheuser-Busch distributor, you had the Miller Coors distributor, you might have had someone else. Who's the best in the market, right? And there's a clear best in many markets. And then we get them to carry the product. Our next step was we would go in and do what we call a crew drive, which is we would jump in the car with the distributor reps. We'd hit the top accounts. We would sell it ourselves. Once we sold it in, they knew it was possible, and it was kind of like proof for them that it sold through, and then they would go handle the market after that.
Okay, so can you explain what a distributor actually does?
So a distributor is going to go to every store and bar or hotel, wherever they sell alcohol in this case. They're going to go there almost every week, and they're going to take an order. And not only take the order, but what they're supposed to do is also sell in new products, a new flavor of this, a new brand of that. just like everything else, they're strapped for time. So they sometimes do that. They sometimes don't. When we would get in the car, they were forced to, right? Because either we would do it or we would force them to do it.
Yeah,
So that's why our presence was important.
Yeah. Okay, so are you like just shipping this distributing company like a ton of pallets to their location?
Yes.
And then they have like 20 reps or like people that are just driving to like their...
Yes. So that's a
You go
simple...
to this county, you go to this county.
We use those simple numbers. So we have one distributor. They have 20 reps. We send in one truck as an example. Each one of those distributor reps calls on 20 accounts a day. So there's 20 reps times 20 accounts a day, 400 accounts. They'll go 5 days a week. So 2,000 accounts a week they're hitting. They may have a telcel which like calls an account up that maybe isn't as high a volume and tries to sell them products. And then usually they're pre-selling the product. So the next day a truck is routed and it's going to deliver all the product that they ordered.
Gotcha. What is the hardest part of scaling this business?
The most intense part, I think, is getting all the distributor partners in place. You want to pick the right partner. You want to have a good contract. You need to talk to them. And that's just a long process. I mean, for us to cover the country, it was 325 distributors. There's a lot of contracts to sign.
Yeah, and they're all they don't work together. They're all like independent like businesses.
Yeah, that's changing over time, but traditionally it's a lot of family-owned local businesses, and there's a lot of consolidation happening in the district.
But they're literally in the business of, hey, ship us your drinks. We have relationships with all the local liquor stores, gas stations, or whatever. We'll get you in those stores.
Exactly.
So you ship to this one point of sale, and then they distribute to the local stores.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, keep in mind, each state may have 20 distributors.
Right.
So, and most likely each distributor is not picking a full truck of product. So we would ship and we would try to maybe we combine a couple distributors and they would pull from each other. But in essence, yes, it's you're shipping to them, they're going and pre-selling it, and then they're delivering it to that customer, and they cover that route, that market exclusively for the brands that sign up with that.
But Red Bull and these other companies, are they doing their own? Are they so big now that they have their own distributors?
Red Bull is an exception. When they came in, they didn't do their own distribution, but they found their own distributor partners that they liked, and they made them sign exclusive contracts where they were the only energy drink. Now, I think at that time there weren't any energy drinks, right? But for the most part, no, they're selling a lot of other brands.
Gotcha. But I guess I see Red Bull trucks driving around. Yeah. That's just the exclusive deals that they made and they just brand it.
Well, there could be a couple things. They can brands will pay the distributors to put their brand on their truck. It's a moving advertisement, right?
Yeah.
They may put their own vehicles in market, like the little Red Bull cars with the can on the back.
Yeah.
Those are their own cars, and their field team is driving those around. Or they may be doing self-distribution.
So did you guys do any sort of like marketing gimmicks like that?
Yeah. We bought a car. We bought a Scion. We put a can on top. We knocked the can off multiple times. We did all kinds of things at the beginning before Four Loko hit. Once Four Loko hit, we literally just spent our time making sure it was in the store and there was as much signage as possible. The brand went viral back when there really was no there was no real social media, but it was going viral because people adopted the brand as their own and were making authentic music videos and whatever reviews, and it was just a viral brand.
It was pretty iconic, I will say. It was very culturally relevant. Probably the most culturally relevant like alcoholic drink that I can even remember. So I know you guys basically, how long was caffeine allowed in it?
So all of the hype and what the brand is known as a caffeinated alcoholic brand, and there was caffeine in for 2 years.
Yeah, it was like a vodka Red Bull, but in the drink bottle.
That's right,
automatically.
That's right.
And people were drinking that anyways. But was there ever any like research that actually showed that people were having heart attacks from caffeine?
So when we had a lot of government pressure for us to change the formula, we hired a group that was helping us do a GRAS study, generally recognized as safe, because the government required that of us. And so this group did a pretty in-depth study, and ultimately it was inconclusive. They could not say that caffeine and alcohol was dangerous, was causing any inherent issue that's not unique to alcohol, right? Like when you drink alcohol, there's inherent risks.
Alcohol's not good for you.
Yeah. So there was no distinct difference, but that didn't matter.
So do you think it was more like the incumbents, like seeing an opportunity? They saw how fast you grew. It was like more of a competitor thing where they like poured gas on the fire to like get you guys out of the market?
I can tell you they weren't coming to our rescue.
Yeah.
Whether they were actually pouring fuel on the fire, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, here's the reality. There's only so much shelf space in a store, right? And the more we take up, we're not one of their brands, the less they have. So who knows?
Yeah, it seems pretty rare for like a small group of guys to be able to build such a nationally known brand. So
especially because we barely raised any money.
Yeah.
So it's very odd.
Did I ask how much equity you got to give away for your family and friends raised back?
Roughly 10%.
And that money was just to do like a MOQ of like, did you have to take a bet on just ordering all the product up front?
You have to order cans was the biggest expense.
The physical cans?
The physical can,
without anything in it?
With nothing in it, because you had to buy it in bulk, right? They don't produce small amounts of those. They do now, but at that time they didn't. And then our production run was most of it. We would do some T-shirts and other things like that, but none of those were big expenses. The product itself was.
Gotcha. And then was it made in America?
Everything was made in America.
Nice. Good.
Yeah.
So I guess, were there any like marketing stunts that you guys did that kind of forced the viral or created the virality, or did it just naturally it was a really identifiable can? There was the first drink to have caffeine in it, which is a hole in the market, and it just really caught traffic with college kids naturally, and then the cultural like meme is the term now, but like virality of it just happened naturally, or did you guys?
It really happened naturally. So first of all, we weren't the first caffeinated alcoholic beverage.
Okay.
There were a few others. What we did is go bigger and stronger than anybody else did. And we consciously did that. We said we're going to go up to the limit. Our motto is like we're going to play by the rules, whatever the rules are, right? We went up to the alcohol limit in each state, and in general that was 11%. Then we realized it was 12%, and so it was very unique in that sense. We made it look different than anything else in the market, and that was literally it. And we consciously never put a face on the brand because we didn't want. You said college kids. College kids drank it, right? But we never marketed to college kids. There were also inner city environments that it was really relevant because it was high alcohol. There were also suburban environments that it worked really well because it was a party drink, right? So we purposely didn't try to like pigeonhole where it worked, and it was a battle for a long time with distributors because they would do naturally what you just did. They would say, well, it's for this person. We'd say, no, it's for everyone. Let's put it out there and let's see where it sells, and everyone was always surprised.
You don't want to turn people away.
That's right.
Okay, so what was, I guess just into the marketing topic, what was the biggest marketing channel?
Well, the biggest marketing channel, I guess, that we didn't really own, but that drove the brand was YouTube. There were people making YouTube videos, and keep in mind, this is like MySpace time, right?
Early, before 2010.
Yeah. Facebook was like new, right? And so YouTube, people made rap videos about it, they made like review videos about it, and those just kind of went viral. And then as the mainstream press hit, it gained awareness in all these non-core demographics, like people that were never going to really drink Four Loko became aware of it because it was on the news or it was on Saturday Night Live or whatever. And that was actually, I would have not chosen to have that awareness because it only was a negative.
Gotcha. Did you guys ever do any like internal marketing campaigns, just like paying for billboards, paying for like signage inside the stores? Is that a thing?
Inside the stores, we just did like very grassroots marketing. So we had stickers that would put the price up. We would have some posters, just stuff like that.
You have free reign to do that. Like you can they give you this section and you can add a little.
You have to ask. In our case, we didn't always ask. We kind of had this ask for forgiveness, not permission model. And that came back to bite us sometimes. But in independent stores, they're less worried about it. In a chain, like let's say a Wawa or 7-Eleven, they might have a little bit more stringent requirements.
Gotcha. But were there any other marketing campaigns?
So after we had to remove caffeine, taurine, and guarana, we were trying to figure out a way to make sure that people knew Four Loko was still available because the mainstream narrative was that it was banned, illegal, and would kill you.
Yes.
So that was a very not good, right? Very difficult thing to battle. And I think at this one moment, I was in the store after all that happened. We had the non-caffeinated product on the shelf within 2 weeks. So there was almost an imperceptible, removal of the product. And I was in a store, there was a ton of products stacked up right next to me. I had a Four Loko shirt on, and somebody came up to me and they were like, doesn't that stuff kill you? And it was just baffling to me because we're literally selling it right here. I have the shirt on. Of course it doesn't kill you. But it's really hard to overcome that mainstream awareness. So what we did, we were coming out with a 12 a 6-pack, 12-ounce bottle. Everything we had done to this point had been in a 24-ounce can. And we said, let's put a billboard campaign in like 10 major cities across the country, kind of spoofing the idea that like everything's gone loco because it was just so hyped up, right? And we did it with these bottles, and it did work. Yeah, the product didn't. The consumers didn't identify with the product, the form and delivery, I guess, of it, and then the billboards they just were looked past.
Yeah, it was a pretty serious. Like it feels like an attack on you guys. You were literally being like the DOJ was going after you. Every DOJ was going after you.
Yeah.
Did you? I always feel like even at my scale of entrepreneurship, like anxiety that I'm like someone's coming after me or anything. Like how long were you like? You probably felt like you like might go to jail or something.
Yeah. So I mean,
I very vulgar language people were using. Like
it'll kill you. Yeah. I mean, I just put a book out called Blackout Punch, and it really details my whole entrepreneurial journey, but it goes into detail around a lot of that. And the only reason I say that is because there's a lot. Right?
Yeah.
And that's a lot to uncover. But I will say that it felt very difficult to navigate that because it felt like everyone was against us. Mm-hmm. And there was a point where I was told by our attorneys, like, don't answer your door because you may get served papers and you may personally get arrested. So, my wife was like, what's going on here, right? We just started a company, made a product. Everything we did was legal. Everything we did was approved. And now we're risking jail time. So that was difficult. Anytime there's a tragedy, which I'm not saying didn't happen, but I'm saying didn't happen because of Four Loko, like, or any inherent risk around that. Like, that's horrible, right? I don't want to hear that somebody got hurt or potentially died. But then when they would say you did that, me, or our product, it's like, look, people die in car crashes when they're driving drunk. It doesn't mean that the product they drank is
alcohol in.
Right.
It's legal. So, how long was that period where like it was like you probably had like a good era where you were like feeling really good, everything was going great, sales were amazing, going viral, like top of the world, and then all of a sudden like you're getting attention from the DOJ.
Yeah.
And then how long was it between like you first got like things started to turn, and then did they just literally make caffeine inside an alcoholic beverage illegal? So
I would say about a year before. So in 2008, we launched Four Loko. In 2009, we had some letters from a couple of attorney generals requesting that we voluntarily reformulate and remove these.
Pretty early, okay.
Pretty early. And our take was like, we're not going to voluntarily do it because it just leaves it open for the next person to come and do it. And that's all we were doing. We didn't have beer sales and other products, right? So we decided not to do that, but we did decide to protect ourselves and have formulas backed up without those ingredients just in case. About a year later, it just somehow, and again, I won't speculate on how, but it hit mainstream press. And it started with this story in Washington State where there was a party and they said people were dying from this new drug called Four Loko. And my partner Jeff is like a super sleuth. Somehow he uncovered the police report and he read through it. And it had like 14 mentions of actual drugs and like 10 mentions of liquor, 6 mentions of beer, and 1 mention of Four Loko. But that was the headline, right? And so that swept from the from the West Coast to the East Coast in a matter of a week. And it just took over. And so it was pretty sudden that happened. And then that just brought everyone out, right? Frivolous lawsuits and every agency jumped on board and put the pressure on. And our legal bills were outrageous.
So when you say frivolous lawsuits, are these just like random people who like see an opportunity to like maybe they can get some damage?
I stepped on a boat, slipped, fell, hurt my hand. It was Four Loko's fault.
But how long did they just make it illegal, or did you guys preemptively just say we don't want anything to do with this?
No, so we pushed it all the way to the end. We basically took the mentality like if it's going to be illegal, it has to be illegal. You have to make a ruling. You have to change the laws. And I don't think they like that. And alcohol is interesting. The TTB actually regulates alcohol. The FDA doesn't. But in this case, the TTB would not change their requirements, which were they approved all the products, and neither would each state, which approved all the products. But the FDA stepped in and they said caffeine is a food additive, and therefore we have jurisdiction. And they ruled that caffeine and alcohol, very nuanced, artificially added caffeine to a malt-based beverage is unsafe and illegal. But I'm sure you can see that there's a lot of loopholes there, right? Yeah. So naturally occurring caffeine in malt-based beverage, artificial caffeine in the spirit. There's just it felt very narrowly defined, but we complied.
Yeah, interesting. And how long was that process until you switched?
So the day it happened, meaning the FDA's ruling, we stopped production and sales of the product that had caffeine. And 2 weeks later, we were shipping product that looked and tasted the same, but had no caffeine to it around it.
What'd you do with all the leftover?
Oh, great question. We tried to do everything. We tried to sell it overseas. Some states were still letting us sell it in. Some states weren't. Some states were saying take it back because alcohol is regulated on a state-by-state basis. So we tried to navigate those waters. We tried to sell it internationally because it was a U.S. viral brand. Everyone wanted it. We got blocked by the U.S. government, and you can't sell it overseas. And
What?
So, yeah, unheard of. And so ultimately what we did is ended up recycling it and turning it into ethanol and recycling the cans.
Whoa.
At least we didn't have to pay to destroy it. We didn't make any money off it. But it was like $20 million of inventory.
In cans already?
In cans.
And so you just had to ship it to like just some ethanol company that was pouring it all in there?
They would just squash the cans, the liquid would all pour out, and they did their thing.
How much was in inventory?
About $20 million worth.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was massive.
How much did you get for it? For all the ethanol?
Nothing. So
they didn't
they
even
would
pay you for it.
No, they would essentially do that process, and they would make the money. Therefore, they wouldn't charge us.
But they would take them all, ship it all to them, like cover costs?
Yeah, I don't remember the details. They might have paid for the cost. We might have had to ship it regardless. Like if we destroyed it, it might have been like $1 a case or something, or $2 a case, and we would have to pay.
Yeah.
It added up quickly. This was like no money has to exchange places. We'll recycle it. We'll sell off whatever they could in whatever form it was, the aluminum, the ethanol, whatever, and then we didn't have to pay.
Interesting. Did you guys see a big hit in sales? Because I feel like how was caffeine like on the can? Like big?
No. It was on the can. It was written in the ingredients. It was the size that it was allowed.
Like on like the micro, just how Monster is, or was it like part of the branding?
So we had figured out that you could put some of the ingredients on the front of the can under the brand. They all just had to be the same size. And so it wasn't small like in a nutritional panel. It was bigger, but it wasn't like Four Loko might be this big, and this was like a line underneath.
Gotcha.
And so the sales spiked for a minute when all this controversy hit, and then they fell off maybe 3 months later when people started realizing there wasn't caffeine. And then to their credit, I don't run the company anymore. My partners have really kept that brand socially relevant, and it's grown significantly since. So it's bigger than it's ever been.
Yeah. Wow. What was like a revenue? Like, do you have public numbers like your annual revenue anytime?
We were well over 150 million
A year? Mm-hmm. Oh my God. What are all the expenses that go into this? You have the cans, you have the actual product.
Yeah.
And then the variable cost of like shipping.
Right.
And then there's no like real marketing costs, I guess, really.
There were small ones, but like the biggest expense would probably be doing distributor incentives. So you can, those people that sell 50,000 products, you can give them an incentive to make sure it's placed in, I don't know, whatever, as many of their stores as they can get.
Anytime they get a deal, they would be like a kickback.
That's right.
Nice.
Yeah. So that was
like 5%, 10%, or is
that might be like it might be like $5 if you get it in a new store, right? Or $10 if you get 5 flavors in a store.
Per case?
Something like that. No, it was based on facings. We didn't pay it per case. We paid some of our team commission per case in the early days just to help keep everybody aligned and incentivized.
What does facings mean?
So if you go into a store, there's going to be, especially in the single serve section, there's going to be, a can of this, a can of this, a can of this, right? Mm-hmm. Each one of those is a facing. And so we would ideally take, at minimum, you have to have one facing, right? Because one can and one slot. But we would try to like spread out to get as much space as possible. So at one point we were getting full shelves. So we'd have 9 facings. Now there'd be maybe 9 flavors. But at its peak, we were getting full doors of product. And the reason retailers do that, if it's selling that fast, they don't have time to restock it. So they need a lot of holding power on the shelf. For us, it was like a display. Yeah. So you got a lot of attention.
Interesting. And so you just pay them for every facing they could negotiate within the store.
We would do that in incentive periods. Okay. So we might do it like one quarter and then not do it for the rest of the year.
Gotcha. That's a nice little bonus for these people.
Absolutely.
Okay, so what would be like a individual unit cost for like a Four Loko? How much would you sell it for?
So we sold it, we probably sold maybe $1.25 a can.
Oh, really? It's only $1?
$1.25 to the distributor.
Quick math. The less your business spends on operations, on multiple systems, on delivering your product or service,
the more margin you have and the more money you keep. So to reduce costs and headaches, smart businesses are graduating to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite is the #1 cloud financial system, bringing accounting, financial management, inventory, HR, all into one platform and one source of truth. With NetSuite, you reduce IT costs because NetSuite lives in the cloud with no hardware required, accessed from anywhere. You cut the cost of maintaining multiple systems because you've got one unified business management suite. You improve efficiency by bringing all of your major processes into one platform, slashing manual tasks and errors. Over 37,000 companies have already made the move. So do the math and see how you'll profit with NetSuite. By popular demand, NetSuite has extended their one-of-a-kind flexible financing program for just a few more weeks. Head to netsuite.com/WGMI. That is netsuite.com/WGMI. Thank you, NetSuite, for sponsoring today's episode.
Right.
Oh, gotcha.
And then
Okay.
the distributor takes their markup, which is 25-30%, and then the retailer takes their markup, which is 30-40%. And so that's where you get to the ultimately, at that time, $2.99 a can price point. So we had good margins. I mean, our margins were over 50% as we went through cost saving exercises.
Wow.
Therefore we can make it for 50 cents.
Is it more expensive to ship all the pallets to the distributors than it is to actually make the cans and fill them?
At the time, it wasn't. I mean, freight has changed a bit, but you can pack a lot into a truck, and so no, it might be. I'm going to use rough numbers. It might be like 20 cents a can, 10 cents a can
To ship?
Yeah.
Gotcha. And then probably like 30, 40 to fill the can.
Assuming that you're shipping efficiently, which means the most efficient is full trucks.
Gotcha.
And then the less you get, the less efficient.
So there's definitely an economies of scale for this business.
Yeah.
So, okay. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. You guys had to take out the caffeine. You turned it all into gas. Those are the main costs. You had $150 million in a year in revenue. And then you guys also, that's just a brand that your company owns. The actual underlying parent company is called Fusion Project, correct?
Fusion Projects.
Fusion Projects. And so that was one brand that you guys spun out.
Correct.
It's interesting that you guys are like just trying to take these different angles. So that's like a vodka Red Bull to can. So it's like caffeine with alcohol. Were there any other creative brands that you spun out of there?
Yeah. So what we realized at one point is that the distributor and that distribution agreement were really important. And once you had that, we had access to the market, right?
Right.
And so Four Loko was the beast, right? It was the big one that everyone would then listen to us, but we would launch other things. So we launched a brand called Earthquake, which was like a high gravity malt liquor, so high alcohol beer, right? So think of like Colt 45 or Steel Reserve was there, right? So we had a brand called Earthquake that was competing with them. Later, we launched different versions of Four Loko. So we had this one called Poco Loco, which was in a 16-ounce can. But what I realized, and I'm sure my partners did too, was like we had multiple assets. We had this Four Loko brand, and the value of that brand, we had this distribution network. And we had a team, right, to handle all of the logistics, production, sales. So how do we capitalize on that? So my goal was to really start to create different brands that helped us diversify, because we were essentially in one channel of sales. We were in the convenience store, I guess two, and independent liquor stores that kind of be classed as the same. We didn't sell in grocery stores. We didn't sell in bars. We didn't sell in restaurants, right? They weren't talking to us about Four Loko. Those are big sales opportunities. So as I started to turn my attention to innovation, I found this product, which was alcoholic root beer. And it was an independent operator, had this great formula, but he had no real way to scale it. And so we essentially acquired the company on a future royalty deal and created this brand called Not Your Father's Root Beer. And it's,
you guys created that?
you know that brand?
Yeah. We used to sell it at the pizza shop I worked in high school. It's like craft. Yeah.
There you go. And so we turned that from a concept into the fastest growing craft beer in the nation in a matter of 18 months. And we were opening up all these new channels. Right now I'm talking to Whole Foods, I'm selling to the military, I'm selling to grocery stores. And so for me, that was the big potential for the company. And you have to have different infrastructure to be able to support those sales. So that was the big opportunity. We ended up selling that brand to Pabst. And then that was my transition out of the company. Today, as the company sits, they have multiple brands and multiple categories.
So are the multiples for selling these brands pretty high?
Yeah, traditionally in CPG and in beverage, if you're a fast growth brand, they'll base it on multiples of revenue. not multiples of EBITDA.
Mm-hmm.
If you stabilize and you're profitable, sometimes they'll base on multiples of EBITDA. Ultimately, it all flushes out in the end. They're going to do multiple assessments of what they're comfortable paying, but they're usually pretty high.
It seems like a pretty straight. Is it like 5x, 10x? Do you know?
Of sales,
Your revenue?
it can vary. I mean, if you're a really fast growth brand, there's some that have gotten 15, 20 times revenue, right? There's others that have gotten 2, 1.
Yeah, specifically with drinks, it seems like a really good business because you always get a new drink every day. Basically, you buy a ton of repeat orders, and then the sales channels are relatively just like, okay, we're in Walgreens. Okay, we're in liquor stores. Okay, now there's gas stations. And so you can like really scale these verticals.
Yeah.
That's a very like laborious, time-intensive path you have to follow, but it's an opportunity for a buyer at any stage, right? So it seems like it's pretty easy to sell these if you have like the distribution already down, or
I mean, usually strategics are buying, so other companies in that category, right? So for alcohol, you might say, for Four Loko, you might say like some of the beer brands might buy it, right? And then they would plug it into their system and they'd have a bunch of efficiencies. They wouldn't need the sales force. They wouldn't need the, the brewery or the co-man. They have all that, right? So that's the most valuable transaction that can happen. There are others that acquire brands, for the capabilities. So if you have a presence in a channel that they want, as an example, they may say, hey, we'll buy this brand, add the revenue to ours, and then we can have access to this new channel. So there's multiple different ways.
Interesting.
And then sometimes it's a financial buyer who says, I just want this revenue and this, especially if you're profitable, this EBITDA, and, we'll acquire for that.
okay. So is it the brand is really pretty much 90% of the value of these products? I feel like the ingredients are all commoditized.
Yeah.
And so it's all about like proving this brand is something that people want and the right formula to match it, basically.
Brand is everything, and it's also how you're going to get the highest multiple, right? And loyalty and all that kind of stuff. But there are other assets. Like as an example with Coya, we're vertically integrated. So we have our own manufacturing facility. We have a lot of capabilities there. It's uncommon in our space. And so companies may look at us and say, hey, we really want to be able to produce products like this. So that production facility is really valuable. So there are multiple things that are valuable within the company.
Okay, I want to get into Coya because you now scaled multiple of these companies to very high revenue numbers. But before Coya, were there any other products that you had tested what were all the different products that you had tested? So some that worked, didn't work.
Yeah. So we had tested this. So right after the FDA ruled that we had to remove caffeine, we had this big company that was essentially taken away from us on a whim, right? But we're like scrambling. And so we said, let's diversify not only the channels, but the products. And we have these capabilities. We have this team in place. And so we're looking at the market and we're saying, what's really working? And we found this one category that was these like alcoholic pouches. Think of like a Capri Sun pouch, right? A little bit bigger, and you would freeze them. You'd throw them in the freezer overnight. When you pull them out, you could kind of squash it up and you'd have a margarita or a frozen daiquiri, right? And so there was only one brand in that category. They were called Dailies. And it was a $100 million category. And so we said, this is right up the alley of what we do. So we jumped into that heavily. We were really excited about it. And as we were starting to produce that, we kind of came up with this other idea where there were these like, think of push pops, we could create alcoholic push pops. And so we could make them in a stick. It would have 6, 8, 9% alcohol. We thought that was really cool. So we went down that path. We made a bunch of mistakes. We bought machinery to produce the products. It took us a little too long to sell in. By the time we actually stood those products up and were selling in, there were 10 other products in that category, right? And so now you have buyers who are going, I don't have shelf space. I don't even know how to merchandise these things. And so that ultimately was a bust. I mean, we were ahead of our time in many ways. Like now, if you look at it, Truly and even Natty Light have these alcoholic popsicles. But at the time, it was too early, and then the category got too crowded. So that was one that we did that didn't work. Bud Light Lime-A-Rita was really popular at one point, and so we decided to kind of extend Loko into that. So we did Loko Ritas with these margarita flavors, and we went really like high end. We did these tactile, like textured cans. We thought it would be different and kind of stand out, and it didn't work. So we were always, and the same with all the companies, we're always testing things, right? And you never know what's going to work. If we hadn't iterated into Four Loko, we wouldn't have had a company.
Right.
So we learned early from that.
But Not Your Father's Root Beer was like the other like hit success that you had.
Yeah, Not Your Father's Root Beer became, like I said, the fastest growing craft beer, and ultimately sold to Pabst for a big number, but they would have paid more, right? We had pre-structured the deal, so they got to kind of trigger it. And Look, I mean, in retrospect, the reason I wanted to keep that brand is it put us into these different categories. But in retrospect, maybe it was the right decision to sell it, which my partners wanted to do, because maybe, I don't know, a year or two later, like sugar publicly became the enemy, and that brand kind of fell off, and then the hard seltzers emerged.
Gotcha. So, what do you mean you pre-structured the deal?
So we were talking to the guy trying to figure out, we didn't have cash to just go buy a company, right? And there wasn't really a company to go buy. He was distributing in like 20 bars. He was producing it in his own brewery, essentially, kegging it up himself. So there wasn't really anything to buy. You couldn't really value it. So what we did is we went to him and said, look, we have all the infrastructure in place. We'll turn this into a $100 million brand. If you can believe that and look at our track record that we'll do that, we'll give you a royalty. All you need to do is what you want to do, which is kind of play Willy Wonka, product creator. You'll be the face of the brand. You are the founder of it. And let us tell your story. And he did all that. And so we structured a future royalty deal where they got nothing up front, but they made money off of every case.
That's smart.
And it worked out really well for them too.
But, okay, so that's like you pre-structured with the founder of it.
With the founder, did you mean with Pabst?
Yeah. Did you have the deal lined up? But then even when were you kind of like middlemaning this in a way?
Yeah. There were some different opinions in terms of myself and my partners on how we should do this. So again, mine was to build out infrastructure that would put us into different channels. One of my partners had developed a relationship with the new owner of Pabst, and he was looking at them saying, hey, they already have this infrastructure and they're trying to grow fast. And so let's partner with them and make them our sales force in these new channels. And then to do that, the owner of Pabst said, I'll do that, but I need to have a pre-structured deal because I don't want to build a brand and then have to pay for what I built.
So they were actually like manufacturing.
No, they were actually so they would go call on, like, let's say Publix headquarters and try to pitch them. And they had people that were doing that in
sales. Okay.
They would do the sales. Yeah.
Interesting. And then the option to buy.
And with an option to buy.
Gotcha. Did you guys transition into actually buying the machines that fills the cans?
We did not. We bought some machines to fill those pouches when we did that, and we learned our lesson. I think we spent like $20 million on machines that we ultimately ended up fire selling.
What are those companies that actually do the formulation and canning required? Like, can someone that's like just starting out a brand, could they literally just they just have to get an MOQ of like 10,000 cans?
Yeah, for the most part. Yeah. And some places will charge you to create the formula, like I was mentioning. Like later on when we were at scale, we could just call them up and say, hey, we want 5 different flavors, and they would happily make it for us.
We had the track record.
We had the track record. But at the beginning, they would charge you for it. Some of those companies would say, we will make we're a turnkey solution, right? We'll even buy the raw materials for you, the cans, the ingredients, whatever, and we're going to charge you X, right?
Gotcha.
And that was obviously premium. So I would say right now it's easier to make a beverage than it ever has been. There are a lot of like turnkey solutions out there.
But it's still pretty expensive. Like, there's no way around it, right? Like, you have to order them up front.
That's right.
Okay, so final thing, could you list what all these people are called? So what were the people that made the flavor called?
So that's a flavor house.
Flavor house. And then the people who can it and actually make the drink?
A co-manufactured or a co-man.
Okay, and then from there, they send it to you?
So we would either have a warehouse at the manufacturing facility, or we'd have a third party, a 3PL, a third party logistics or warehouse that we would ship it to and store it there. Then we'd have a logistics company that would actually organize and broker the freight to pick it up and deliver it
to the 300 plus distributors.
The distributors, right? They would try to, and that's where some of the internal people come into play. They would try to marry loads up. So if you could fit 20 pallets on a truck and this guy's going to take 5 and this guy's going to take 5, like, can we make that one truck in one trip? And then we would sell it to the distributor, who would be the local market. Like, they'd receive it, they'd sell it out to the stores, then there's retail and the customer.
But your job's done at the distributor level, basically.
Technically, but if, like I was mentioning earlier, if the retailer doesn't buy it, and if the customer doesn't buy it from the retailer,
your liability.
It's our liability. So you really need to manage multiple businesses. Yes, we need to get the distributors on, we need to work with them, but ultimately our customer is the end customer who we don't have direct access to, because if they don't buy the brand, we don't keep selling.
Gotcha. That's awesome. Really interesting story.
Thanks.
That's a brand that we all know and love. Okay, but now you have another huge success, Coya. I see the Starbucks all the time.
Yeah.
Where are you all at right now?
What retailers are we in? We're in most retailers. We're in everything from Whole Foods and Sprouts, so like natural retailers, and there's a long list of other ones, to specialty retailers like Wegmans, to conventional retailers like Kroger and Publix, to convenience stores like Wawa and 7-Eleven, to Starbucks and airports, and we're trying to be pretty ubiquitous.
Okay, you gotta teach me how to do this. Okay, so
and soon to be on Amazon. Yes, I've seen friends. We haven't.
I'm so excited to go into how this is different now than it was back then too.
Sure.
So first off, you left Fusion. Were you taking some time off, and then were you like, I'm sick of this industry, I worked my ass off, I'm done? Or was this just like how did you decide to get involved with Coya?
Yeah, so there was the cliff notes of it is basically my partners and I, over the course of 10, 12 years, we just kind of started to see the world differently. And it was becoming clear that all three of us weren't going to keep working in the company. So we didn't know how that was going to work. And I pushed a lot. I was kind of the odd man out in terms of the mentalities. And so I woke up one day and was fired from my own company.
Oh, okay.
And so I was like, the first emotion was relief, because it was very, tense for a while. The second emotion was like, oh shit, what do I do now? Mm-hmm. And along that, those final years, I had started investing in better for you food and beverage because my life had changed. My wife is a nutritionalist. I had a son. My second son was born. And so I just wanted to really work on things I was aligned with. And in those early days, I was investing in them. So I had invested in this company called Raw Nature 5. I had a buddy in Chicago who called me and he said, hey, I know this girl and this guy and they created this drink and would you check it out? And it was a plant-based protein drink. And it was in it's very similar to Not Your Father's Root Beer. It was in like 20 stores. One of them happened to be the gym that I worked out at. So I tried it, thought it was good. Mm-hmm. My second son was born dairy intolerant, so we became a dairy-free household. So it just made sense to me, right? And keep in mind at this time, that would have been, let's call it 2012, 2013, like plant-based was not what it is now. That meant like soy milk, right? There weren't these options. It wasn't like popular. And I was in Chicago, which is like a meat and potato town, Midwest, but it seemed to be working. And so I invested, and then a few months later, the original two founders called me and they said, hey, we're on the verge of going out of business. And this is after Fusion. I was looking for something else to do. They had a consultant who had been asking me to come and be CEO of this company. And I was like, I'm not a CEO for hire. I found brands, I work on my own things. But I saw an opportunity there. So me and these two other guys, we said, we'll fund the company. Mm-hmm. I'll come in and co-found the pivot of this company, and then I'm going to run it. And initially my plan was to be the 1-year interim CEO role. But here I am 7 years later. It just happens. And that was it. We pulled Raw Nature 5 off the shelf for a couple months while we made it scalable and bulletproof safe. And what I mean by that is Coya is what they call a low acid product. So it's very sensitive. Think of like milk. And so it has to be refrigerated from production to consumption. And so the FDA had come in and said, hey, the way you guys are pasteurizing this, which is called HPP, high pressure pasteurization, they said, we don't know if we feel like that's safe. So you need to prove to us that it's safe, or you need to find a new way to produce it. And coming off of Four Loko, I was like, we are not getting into that game again. So we ultimately pivoted and we found what's called UHT, ultra high temperature pasteurization. So it heats it up, kills anything in it, and we were able to scale the product based on that. So the product was off the market, like I mentioned, for a couple months, and then I'll call it, I get my years mixed up. I want to say it was September of 15. It could have been 16. We launched nationally with Whole Foods. That was our first partner.
Gotcha. Okay, I have a lot of questions. So first off, when you were fired from your company, do you still have the equity? And you just don't work there day to day? That's right. Okay, so you still get distributions if that's ever happening. Okay, gotcha. And then when you
so I'm just as big, if not a bigger fan of them and the brands now.
For sure. Yeah. It's just concept now. Okay, then so this seems like your playbook now, because the same thing with Not Your Father's. Like, it's like good to kind of let the founder make the mistakes, do the early legwork, and then prove it in a small market. And then you step in with all the experience of like, this is how we get into these stores. This is the distributor networks we need. That's kind of like your go-to strategy now.
Yeah, so, I like innovating and I like coming up with new things, but like I also recognize opportunities. And so just like Not Your Father's, this was an opportunity and it made sense for everyone.
So what did you specifically see in Coya? Was it sales numbers? Was it like reorders, velocity, or is it just you like people? It made sense for your life?
Yeah, a bit of it was gut. I liked the product because it fit with my lifestyle. And it was actually interesting to me that there was this like emerging plant-based movement. Mm-hmm. So at the time, saying you were vegan was very, and I think still is, very polarizing, right? You're either vegan or you're not. Yeah. this idea of this plant-based movement allowed people to like me eat a hamburger one night, but choose to have only plant-based proteins in my in my pantry or refrigerator. And so I thought that was an interesting opportunity. Like I mentioned, I was personally moving into a dairy-free lifestyle. So was my wife, and I don't know. I just felt like there was a good opportunity there. I can't crystallize what it was. Yes, there were some sales. But there was nothing that suggested it could be what it is today. We did have some distribution in one Whole Foods, and I walked in there and kind of secret shopped it.
Yeah.
And I was standing behind, the wall of the products, and ours was on there as Raw Nature 5, which was an ugly package and a bad name, but it was there.
That's when it was called Raw Nature 5?
Raw Nature 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And I listened to this woman explain the product to the guy she was with, whoever he was, and it was very simple. She was like, it's a plant-based protein drink, it's dairy-free. And I was fascinated because anytime you can get a story so concise that somebody else can tell it, there's really something there, right? Mm-hmm. Now, at that time, I was also looking at other products and categories. I was looking at an alcoholic tea product to get involved with and maybe just advise, maybe invest in. And I remember talking to one of the guys at our flavor house, and he was like, yeah, go in that tea, protein, who cares? There's plenty of proteins. And I'm glad I didn't listen to him, but, it was just a bit of gut.
So it's more subjective than objective. It's just like, okay.
And even with all the investing I've done, it's really just been like, do I understand the product and the proposition? And is it something that I want? Even if I'm not an actual consumer of it, I'll give you an example. I don't really consume much THC. I'm not against it. I get paranoid, right? Mm-hmm. But I have a buddy who helped us create the brand Not Your Father's Root Beer, and he's big in the THC space. And he came to me with this idea of this brand called Drippy, which is a THC beverage. And if you look at the trends, like Dry January is bigger than ever, but the people that are not drinking aren't staying sober. They're just switching to other substances, right? So it just made sense to me. So those are the kind of things I decided to jump into.
Okay, interesting. So Coya, I guess when did the name change?
So when we put it off the market, we were going through all these kind of changes, right? And so one was to rebrand it. So we hired this. Go ahead. So
you bought the company? They were going bankrupt, basically.
Yes.
And how much of it did you and those two guys buy?
We put $500,000 into the company. We didn't buy it outright, but I was clear with them. I felt like Marcus Lemonis in The Prophet. I was like, I'm 100% in control, right? And that's just how it worked. And they stayed involved with the brand. And so we quickly pulled the product off the market. We hired a branding agency. We created the brand Coya. And then there were two other criteria for me to really launch the brand. One was that we needed representation. I didn't know brokers or distributors in the space. And so we needed somebody who was going to kind of introduce us to the retailers. And so I flew out to California to what's called Expo West. It's the big natural food and beverage trade show. And I met this guy named Bill Weiland, who owned Presence Marketing, which is the main broker in the space. And we were chatting, and I said, look, I'm thinking of doing this, but I'm not going to do it unless I have your support. He goes, well, I'm not going to support it unless I have you involved. So that was easy. Shake hands. We're good there. The third criteria, scalable product, was the first one. Having Bill involved was the second. And the third was that we had some level of support from a launch partner. Well, luckily, Bill and Presence had helped us get Whole Foods interested. And so that wasn't a smooth rollout. We could talk about that, but essentially that's what gave us the confidence to relaunch the brand. It was actually in late 2016.
So scalable, you had a distributor connection,
yes,
and a launch partner, meaning like a retail store to launch with.
Right.
What made it scalable?
So the pasteurization process made it not scalable, and so when we pivoted it was scalable.
So how long did that take you to figure out?
It took probably about 4 months.
Okay. And then the original founders have gotten into one Whole Foods before.
Correct.
How did they negotiate that?
They just went into so Whole Foods was different, right? It was
more local.
Exactly. It was before Amazon was involved, and so they just went in and they just talked to the people in the store, and they said, "Will you let us sell it in here?" And they said, "Well, we'll let you sell it in this store."
But then, once you took over, you wanted to legitimize that relationship and launch through them.
I wanted to launch with someone, and so look, Whole Foods was a dream to launch with, but if it wasn't them, it had to be somebody that had some scale. Because what I did not want to do was go knock door to door and try to scale this thing. It would just take too long.
Okay. And then what was that conference called that you went to find the distributor?
It's called Product or Expo West Natural Products.
Okay, so the distributors that you knew from For Loko, completely different. It's liquor stores, gas stations, 7-Eleven. This is going to be like the vegan product, right? So
Right. So they sell into grocery stores, but Koya's Coya is refrigerated. It's
the bottles like that.
yes,
Yeah.
not this version,
Yeah.
but our original version. So it has to be kept cold, like I was saying, for production and consumption. The beer distributors don't have that capability, so we had to have different distributors. So
Gotcha. So you were starting from scratch, basically.
Starting
You
from
just
scratch.
knew what steps needed to be taken.
that's right.
Interesting.
And so one of the ways I found to kind of legitimize myself in that specific space is I met another entrepreneur, this guy named Bill Moses, who had founded a brand called Kavita, which was is a kombucha brand, and he had just sold it to Pepsi. And so he and I kind of hit it off. He invested in the company, and he was another intro into that world.
So you're really meeting really key players. That's the main part of it at this point. Okay, so I'd love to hear your CEO strategy here of like, all right, I got the brand, I have the connection, we're ready to launch. You have a million different choices you can go with. So why did you start with Whole Foods, or who did you start with?
Yeah, so Whole Foods came to us after a meeting and said, we will launch you guys nationally. And at that time, to launch nationally was a huge deal. It was kind of unheard of, right? So, look, there's different routes you could take. I know other companies that have launched in the local geography, and they've really saturated it, and they've really supported it, and they've gotten their velocities really high. And then they went and sold that story across the rest of the country, and they expanded.
That story.
That story, that data, that proof, right? So they have proof that it works. And they've raised money based on that. They've expanded based on that, and that's great. It's really hard to say no to the number one natural retailer when they say we want to launch you nationally. Now, was it the most efficient, scalable? I don't know, right? We had to over-support. And there were multiple reasons that we had to over-support. We produced our first run of the product, and when the distributor was there to pick it up, we realized that 10% of it had spoiled. And so it wasn't unsafe for consumers, but if you've ever had spoiled milk, it wasn't pleasant, right?
That tastes good.
So we decided we had to kill that line, dump it all, and we had to produce it again really quickly to get it to Whole Foods. We had to call Whole Foods and ask them if they would extend our launch, because they have certain days. They said, it needs to be here by this day. We're going to do what's called a reset. They change the shelves or the coolers, and it needs to be here by this day for us to do that. We missed that. So we had to hire merchandisers to go out and make sure the product got on the shelf. We hired demo companies to go out and sample the product. The way I looked at it is like, this is our shot. We have to make it work. If it doesn't work, it's over. And if it does, we have this amazing story that Whole Foods launched us nationally, and here's the velocity, right? And so that's what we did.
Okay, so a few things on that. One, how did you sell Whole Foods? Like, what are you saying in a sales call with them?
So ultimately, what I realized afterwards is that a lot of it had to do with Bill Weiland presence. So the pitch was simple. It was a plant-based protein drink. And actually, my partners, Maya and Dustin, had done the original pitch. And so there was interest around that because it was this emerging category, right? And Whole Foods was supporting new things, and we were vegan, but we weren't positioning that way. So I think they were supportive of that. But ultimately, what we found out later is that Bill and the Presence team, they represent a lot of products. And so Whole Foods had come to them and said, look, we have this successful product, I don't know what it was, in this one region. We want you to rep it and take it nationwide with us. And he said, I'll rep it and take it nationwide if you guys put Coya nationwide. So that relationship really mattered, and it gave us a lot of leeway where we may not have had it otherwise. We missed, as I mentioned, we missed the first reset. We had missed the whole first launch date, but they gave us a lot.
So he had the leverage basically there.
That's right.
Cool. Did you guys show analytics of this segment is growing? This is what we prediction the market size, or literally just this is the concept, this is our angle, it's proven here.
Yeah, we didn't have that data at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, we could have paid and tried to get the data about the market and the category, but we used their data, we used their insights, we used passion, and somebody takes a chance on you.
Gotcha. So then you were saying that some people will choose to launch locally inside of a Whole Foods market, and they learn the sale, or are you saying that these people will put just their drinks in one local area and then test their marketing, their branding, the messaging, on the actual product? Or
so there's a brand called Vive that I invested in. They're a functional shop, like kind of like turmeric shop.
Yes, I actually know that one.
And they launched in Southern California, and they were in a lot of the Southern California retailers, like Lazy Acres, like Bristol Farms, whatever. And they were in that division of Whole Foods. So geographically, they were within a reasonable, precise geography. What that allowed them to do is when you hire a team to go out into the stores and support or do demos, you don't need somebody in Baltimore and in New York City and in Florida. You need 1 or 2 people in SoCal, right? And so it's a little bit more efficient. They can pop into stores, they can do demos, they can make sure the product's on the shelf. So that's what I mean. And then when they would get in those stores, they would make sure it worked. Yes, they might test their packaging, but it's not like digital. You can't I can't put a new image up next day. Right? I have 3 months worth of inventory that I have to sell before I get the new one.
So the demos, they have a person that goes out there and giving away samples and then explaining it basically.
So the saying in beverage, alcohol or non, is that liquid to lips wins. People have to try your product. If they like the taste of it, they'll buy it again. If they don't, they won't. Right? As simple as that. And so where legal and non-alc, the idea is give it away. And that could be at a demo, or that could be going to a big event and just handing out bottles, right?
So you hire people to go to the store, and to give away samples. Do the stores let you just do that?
No, you book through them. So
they have 2 people are allowed to do this a day.
Yeah, think of Costco.
Yeah,
if you ever walk through Costco, there's demo stations all over the place.
Do you have to pay for that?
Those are all booked. Those are all paid for. It's done different at different retailers. So in a place like Costco, you might have to use their demo company. Yeah. You educate them, and they sample that, and they'll sample whatever the next day, right? They're not employees of the company. In others, they say, we want your employees in here doing it, which I actually prefer because we know the brand, right? And you may have to pay for a slot, or they may just decide.
So those are more kind of focus groups for the brands to learn.
Exactly.
The message and how people are conveying the brand.
I think one of the most important things that we did is that we would go do the demos ourselves at the beginning. And then you would learn how to talk to the customer and what mattered to them, right? We never pitched it as a vegan drink, as an example.
Yeah.
We would talk about it being plant-based or dairy-free. That was less polarizing. We would always talk about low sugar because sugar was a really hot topic at that time. We also talked about how delicious it was, which is subjective, right? Everyone will say their drink tastes great, but we would put it in their hands and let them take a sip, and you'd hear that firsthand feedback.
So you're literally there in the store, and then every person that walks by, you're opening with a different one-liner.
Totally.
It's vegan. No one replies. It's plant-based. 2 people reply.
Anything you can do to get them over, first of all, and then second of all, whatever it takes. And the way I look at it is you're only in that store once. You can't be there every day. You're not going to go there every week. And so do whatever it takes, 1, to get them to try it, and then 2, to get them to buy it. So we would offer, here's a coupon. If you buy one, you'll get 1 free right now after you tasted it. Right? Let's just stack the deck. And we would always see the velocity spike up. You'd sell a bunch when you're there, just normal, right? Mm-hmm. But we would also we'd see it come back down after the demo, but it was at a new...
And a baseline. People come back.
That's right.
Okay. Yeah. So how granular does it get? If you're in California, maybe saying it's vegan is a benefit because the culture over there is a little different. But if you're in Texas, no way.
Right.
So have you seen any examples of that? And then 2, how do you implement a strategy around that?
So that can be geographic, like you just mentioned, California and Texas, or it could be retailer driven, right? So in Whole Foods, I might say, as an example, that it's vegan. In 7-Eleven, I'm just going to say it's low sugar protein.
Gotcha.
Because they don't typically, right? I'm painted with broad strokes, but that consumer doesn't care as much about the fact that it's vegan.
But how are you conveying that? Because the bottle stays the same, right?
Sure. So we looked at, I thought you were talking about how are we mentioning it in person. So on the bottle, we try to find our key attributes and put them on the front of the bottle. So as an example with this, 20 grams of protein, we think that's the number 1 most important thing. And then we look at, in this case, in these ones, we fortified it with 21 vitamins and minerals, 3 grams of sugar. We know low sugar is important, and then dairy-free on this one. So we would put the key callouts on the front, and then the entire ingredient list is on the side. So that's how we would convey what was most important. And I'll go back to Four Loko as an example. 12% alcohol was key, front and center on the can. We actually even found
on the top right,
to highlight it. Yeah. So I think that's the way to draw people to your and convey your message without being there in person.
But you can't segment that based on state.
No, okay. No, we cannot segment our messaging.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so we try to take our top 3.
So even once you found the marketing, so doing those demos is worth doing consistently.
Yes.
That's that's kind of your marketing at the end of the day, an in-person person at a store.
It's one form of marketing.
Okay.
So, but I'll stay on that for a minute. So we are in Ralph's, which is a Southern California grocery store that is part of the Kroger company. we are in our category, which is refrigerated functional juice, the number 1, number 2, and number 3 best-selling items. So it's clearly a relevant brand there. We have 3 items. We found out that 8% of the people that walk in Ralph's shop that cooler section, and only 6% of them buy Coya. We're the number 1 product. So there's so much low-hanging fruit from people who are even walking over to that cooler to getting them to try it, and let alone the people that are walking in the store. So demos are really valuable, and I think we did this. Like, one of the mistakes people make over time is it seems like a launch and early stage tactic, and it's something I think that you should just actually never stop doing.
Gotcha.
Now, we talk to consumers in a very different way now as well. I mean, with digital and social, we do a lot of stuff on TikTok, and I'm guilty of thinking that TikTok was all like kids dancing. Why would we ever do this? And we had an amazing director of marketing tell us, like, we really need to be on TikTok. We had this new investor come in, and they told us your first dollar, if you're not on Amazon, should be on TikTok for awareness. And we started doing it. And the difficulty with what we do, being retail focused, is that you can't link the awareness to the sale. Right?
The attribution,
Yeah, we have to go in and we just watch our velocity, and it just happened to go up around that time. And so I can't say 100%, but I can say with pretty good confidence that TikTok move the needle, because awareness is important.
So you guys have a TikTok strategy?
We do.
Interesting. What has it been?
So what we started doing, I would say about a year and a half ago, we pivoted to all social being TikTok first. So we would create a lot of content that was focused on TikTok, and then we would take the best of that content and reuse it on Instagram. We also recently realized, like, our static images on Instagram are performing really well, so we don't want to be all video.
They were?
They were.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, which traditionally for the last year we would say all video. Video still does really well, but these static images were doing really well as well.
Fascinating. Okay, so you launched with Whole Foods.
Yes.
You had some hiccups, you said?
Yeah, so our first production run spoiled, so we decided not to ship it. We had to kind of troubleshoot it really quick, produce it again by the end of the week, get it out to them, and then it wasn't seamless. It wasn't just on every shelf like it was supposed to be, so we had to over support. But in general, the launch was pretty successful. We had given them a 3-month exclusive window, and I think we launched in September. But what I didn't know at the time was that so retailers, it's a really long sell cycle. So they review a category maybe once, maybe twice a year, and then when they review it, it might take up to 6 months until they change that on the shelf. So best case, you get a review, you get a yes, and that means 6 months from now you'll go on the shelf, right? Very different from digital, where you get a yes by that minute. So what I didn't realize was we were launching in the midst of review season. So our exclusive window, which should have been to December, actually ended up going all the way to March, because no one was considering new products. We had a very pragmatic approach. It was like, get into natural, and then saturate natural, and maybe year 2 or 3 go into specialty, saturate specialty. Year 4 go into conventional, then go into mass and club, which would be Walmart, Target, Costco, whatever. And then maybe one day get into C-store, the 7-Elevens. And year 1, it blew up. In the best way, though.
Yeah.
Wegmans came calling us. They're a specialty retailer in New York. We said yes, and it became the number 1 beverage in our category quickly. And then shortly after that, Giant Eagle, which is a very conventional retailer in the Midwest, it's kind of where I grew up, and they said they wanted it. And I was really nervous about launching at that time, I don't know, almost $5 drink at a very conventional retailer, but we said, let's give it a shot. It worked well.
Did they come to you, or did...
So that guy that I was talking about, Bill Moses, he had launched a couple beverages with them. We're both from Youngstown, Ohio. So Giant Eagle is our local retailer, and he knew some people there. He had success with them. He scheduled the meeting, and they said yes. And so we decided to go for it.
And so the KPI is still velocity for them to be like, for sure, this is how what was that looking like?
So the velocities are different by channel. So like, as an example, I was looking at our Whole Foods numbers today. And we might sell, we're on par right now, we might sell like 170 to 200 bottles a week there.
Per store.
Per store. You go to a conventional retailer, we might sell, if we have 3 flavors, we might sell 10 a week, right? So, but that's good for them, right? So it just depends. Whole Foods has roughly 425 stores. Kroger has 1,800, right? So there's just different scales and different metrics. What we want to make sure of is that we're in the top 25% of products in our category in any retailer based on their metrics.
Gotcha. So how do you choose which retailer to go with next?
So once we proved out that we worked in natural, specialty, and conventional, it was just a race. Like we would take any retailer and we would aggressively support them. We would do what are called TPRs, temporary price reductions. Our idea there was we noticed that every time you do a 2 for $7 as an example, or $1 off or whatever, you would get a lot of new trial. And so we would do that. We do an aggressive schedule. We do a deeper discount, like maybe a buy one, get one free at the very beginning. Since we were new, we might do demos at the beginning. But it's really kind of dependent on who was saying yes. That's who we launched.
And your manufacturer can just handle this as you scale?
So we had a co-man at that time, and they had 2 facilities. And so they were able, it wasn't seamless. It, of course, has issues, but we were able to scale pretty quickly. Now, 2 years ago, we decided to vertically integrate. We bought our own manufacturing facility. Gives us a lot more flexibility. Doesn't mean we want to be less planned out, but we can if we need to.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And then so if you get to like into a Starbucks, right? Like that's like all of a sudden you have like 1 million units you need extra.
Yeah.
There's upfront cost to that.
Yes.
Where does that come? How do you get that money for those upfront costs?
So unlike for Loko or Fusion, we raised a lot of money at Coya.
Oh, okay.
So we have a lot of investors, which helped us with that, working capital.
Would you ever get a loan from a bank, or is investors the better way to go?
Yeah, if you can. I mean, we started this company intentionally being a high growth and high burn company. It was very popular at the time. It was like profitability didn't matter. That was the vibe, right? It was like profitability doesn't matter. Just grow as fast and big as you can. The strategic will come and inquire you, and they'll figure it all out. And over a couple of years, you saw that message start to change. It was like, okay, you have to have a path to profitability. So we would show how we were going to bring down our production costs and our raw ingredient costs, and how we maybe do a price increase, things like that. Then about 18 months ago, it switched to like, no, you have to actually be profitable. And so that was a bit of a transition. But we navigated all those well.
That was 6 months ago?
No, about 18 months ago.
18 months ago. So 5 years, you're just only growth.
5 years, all growth, burning a lot of money. I would say for the last 6 months, we've been profitable every month, so we've turned that corner.
How much did you raise?
In total, we raised $72 million.
Oh my God. How much are you doing your revenue now?
We sell over $100 million in retail sales.
Wow. So it took $72 million to get to 9 figures in revenue, basically, over 5 years.
Over 5 years.
It's a lot different than the digital world.
Yeah.
That's incredible, though, because now you're just in the green for the future.
Theoretically, we hope so. I mean, but there are decisions we make, right? Like we now have a facility, so we may decide to invest in CapEx on machinery or whatever it may be.
So you are manufacturing.
We manufacture everything that we sell except for these products. We manufacture out of our facility. Since these are a different process, we use a co-man right now. But yeah, I mean, if we'll be doing a rotation in Costco soon, we will invest heavy to make that work. So there are always investment opportunities, which is why I say hopefully, because you have to make those decisions now that you're operating a profitable company.
But you're just building a massive enterprise value.
Yes.
As you do all this. Okay. So you're pretty much in almost every retailer, I would say, that you possibly can. Is there anywhere else that you want to be?
We're not back in Target yet. We were for a while. And
what happened?
We actually don't know.
Okay.
Our velocities there were really good. They were beating the category average, and then we got taken out. And we've been working with them ever since to understand why, and then present them our case. We think we're making progress. We think we'll be back in there relatively soon. So that's a big one for us. We're not doing any business in Costco yet, but we have some things coming up there. We're not on Amazon, so we'll be launching our Tetra Packs next month in 12 packs. Because the number one request we get from people, how do I buy in bulk? Right now, it's one bottle at a time. We're selling over 2 million bottles a month, but it's one bottle at a time.
Does it cut from a customer perspective?
So what we found is our customers are buying 4 bottles or more every
individual bottles 4 times, like 4 individual bottles.
Each time somebody goes into the store, the average purchase is 4 bottles.
Wow.
So our number one request is how do we buy in bulk? Right. So there were multiple solutions for that. So I'll tell you all of them. For our existing products, what that meant is we would do a multi-serve. So we're currently a 12-ounce bottle. We created a 32-ounce bottle. So you can buy in bulk that way. And what that does for us is it gives us different usage occasions. So what you would typically do with a single-serve bottle is just drink it by itself. Well, now with the multi-serve, you can use Coya as a protein creamer for your coffee, or you can use it as a protein milk for your cereal. There's other things.
Mix it in.
Base for your smoothie, whatever it may be. So that's one. The second we did is we're launching 4-packs. So you can buy 4 bottles at a time, which people are already doing anyways. It's just a little more convenient. You pick up one 4-pack. So those are the two with our existing products. But what we what we decided to do was look at Amazon. We had no presence there. We had over 5,000 searches a month for Coya with no transactions because there's no product, right? They don't sell perishable beverages. And so we decided to launch a Tetra Pak, 12-pack, shelf-stable on Amazon to fulfill that occasion.
So that's what these are?
That's what these are, yeah.
Okay, gotcha. So I would have to imagine that selling on Amazon and actually shipping these to customers, the old version, or even like a Four Loko, I guess it's alcohol. But,
Can't ship it on.
Yeah, but that's expensive. Is it, like, do you have to like charge like double the price if you sell online?
So we have kind of, traditionally with our first product, our perishable 12-ounce product, we have the double whammy, which is we are heavy because we're a beverage, and then we're refrigerated. So you have to ship it overnight with dry ice or ice.
I know that thing.
Right? So we just could not make that profitable.
Yeah.
So we just stopped doing it.
Gotcha.
With this, it's still heavy. We don't have to ship it overnight because it can be warm. Mm-hmm. The other thing we noticed is that, and I'm guilty of this too, when I have a fridge full of Coya, I drink 1 or 2 a day. When I have to go to the store to get it, I drink 1 or 2 a week when I go to the store, right? So this is an opportunity for us to pantry load, to have people pantry load. They have 12 of them minimum in their store. They'll drink them more often.
Gotcha. So is it the same product or is it internally?
So we started with the exact same product because we were looking at it and saying what people are asking for is not like a higher protein or a different product. They were asking for buy in bulk and get it delivered.
Gotcha.
So that's when we started with these are the same flavors as our top 3 perishable flavors. And then as we looked at it, it's a little bit lower liquid, so it's 11 ounces versus 12, which made the protein a little bit lower. We thought protein was important, so we boosted this a little. So this is 20 grams of protein. Our original one is 18 grams.
Gotcha.
And then we decided that we wanted to fortify with vitamins and minerals, so you can kind of get a little more bang for your buck. It can almost serve as a meal replacement. And so those are the 2 differences.
What did you have to remove to make it?
So we didn't have to remove anything.
Oh, okay.
What we had to do was process in a different way. So this is called aseptic. So what you have to do is package this in a completely aseptic enclosed environment. No air can get in. And that allows it to sit on a shelf warm and not spoil. Our existing product is called ESL, extended shelf life. And that means you do everything cold and you still try to keep it as enclosed as possible, but it's not airtight. That's the only difference.
Okay, interesting. And this is your first time selling online?
No, we before COVID, we had a D2C store, and then we realized it was not profitable. So we shut it down.
Okay.
And then COVID hit, and everyone was buying everything online, so we relaunched it. We also launched on Instacart and GoPuff, all these other delivery options. And then again, we realized that 80% of our marketing team's time was being spent on customer service issues with our D2C, because we didn't. It wasn't like just shipping through Amazon. We had third-party warehouses. There were always issues. It was slow. It might not get delivered. And so we shut that down again. So this will be our first time on Amazon, but not our first time delivering product.
Gotcha. How has it changed since Four Loko to now, the business, the industry itself?
Well, I can't say how the alcohol industry changed because I'm not in it anymore. But I would say the differences here, like grass is always greener, right? And so when I was in alcohol, I hated the fact that you had an exclusive distributor for an area. 10 counties, that's the only person that could sell that product. But they called on every store in that county, right? So if I was out in the market and I decided to go pitch somebody on Four Loko and they said yes, I knew who to call. In non-alc, there's layers of distributors. So you have what are called broadliners, UNFI or KE, and they deliver to Whole Foods or to Sprouts or to even some Kroger or Safeway divisions, right? And those are broadliner distributors. You have store direct, so I can ship it directly to Kroger or whoever accepts it that way, right, into a division. Publix is a good example. We ship directly to them. Starbucks is a good example. We ship directly to them. Then you have what are called DSDs, direct store distributors. And those might be in a specific geography. Like we have a DSD in New York. They'll be more like a beer distributor. They call on every account in that geography, or for the most part. And then you have like broadline food service and C-store distributors. This one's called McLean that delivers to 7-Elevens, and they might deliver drinks as well as like keychains. They deliver everything. So it's much more complex.
Well, you're shipping directly to Starbucks. How do you facilitate that? Do you have like a logistics company that you hire?
Yes.
And they just come to your warehouse? and then they just have 12 trucks going every direction?
So essentially the way it works is that Starbucks has their own distribution centers, and so they get the product there, and then from there they'll ship out to, and they may have, I'm making it up, I don't know what it is, but let's say they have like dairy, right? Their cream for their coffees. They may deliver that to each store every day, every 2 days. Well, Coya can be on that as well.
So so they have their own distributor locations. They're not going individual stores yourself.
Exactly.
Okay, that's manageable.
Yeah, and we're in 9,000 of them, so it'd be really hard to hit everyone.
So you're writing a book now. Why did you decide to write the book? And is this like a personal brand decision, or what was your thought process behind the book?
You know, over the years, I'd had people casually say, like, you should write a book. And I just kind of brushed it off. Okay, whatever. I remember very specifically one of our really good friends, at the beginning of COVID, she was struggling with something she shared with me, and I shared a story back with her. And she said, you know, you should really write a book. I think you could help people. And I think that was probably what set me over to actually write the book. So at the beginning of COVID, I would spend 2 hours every Friday on a walk talking to a ghostwriter who would kind of comprise and compile all of my stories and help me get a framework. And what I didn't want to do is create this like how to launch a beverage book or how to, it's not my style, right? So what I was willing to do is just share my story, who I am, where I grew up, my entrepreneurial ventures, mistakes I've made, wins I've had. And I struggled with it for 3 years. I wasn't sure I was ever going to put it out. And when I moved here to Miami 3 years ago, when I moved down, I met this guy who I could kind of relate to, similar upbringings and personalities. And he read it. He's like, you really got to put this out. Like this can help some people. And so that prompted me to actually do it. And I put it out a couple months ago, and I guess it's maybe partially a personal branding thing, but really it's just sharing a story. My metric for success is that if it helped one person, if I heard that somebody got something out of it, it would be a success. And I want to say a month ago, I was heading to the airport, and I got a text from this guy that I used to work with, and he shared, my story is very candid, right? And so I shared that my mother struggled with addiction for, 15, 20 years, and talk about how I handled it. And he shared a really heartfelt message with me and said, he hadn't talked to his dad in 7 years. And because of my book, he was going to reach out to him. And I was like, great, success. So mission accomplished.
Where's it available?
It's available on Amazon and on barnesandnobles.com.
Interesting. So do you think that writing the book is like opening up a new door in your career, or just something you just felt like you wanted to get out there so people could relate to it?
It could be. I don't. Look, I mean, the only thing we know about creating any plan is that it's wrong the minute we finish it, right? And so I look at that for life as well. It's like, could it open up some new things? Maybe. Is that why I did it? No. But I'm going to be open to whatever it brings and see what happens.
What's your perspective on this whole like personal brand content creator world we're living in now? Like, do you feel pressured to like participate if people tell you have to start making YouTube videos? Like, because you're so successful in your field, like it doesn't seem like that necessary, but I would love to hear how you view it.
Yeah. If I were a first-time entrepreneur right now, I feel like it would be essential. I mean, I feel, and you can tell me, I mean, all the people you interview, I'm sure you hear a lot that are creating their own personal brand and content. I also think the founder story is really popular. And so there is a little bit of pressure, even doing podcasts, right? To kind of get in the spotlight, I guess, and I put a face with the brand or whatever. I don't feel a lot of pressure. It's just not something I'm gonna spend a lot of time on. I have started posting a bit on LinkedIn, and I do it when I'm inspired to do it. And I know it's not algorithmically correct, but I don't when I'm not, because it's starting to feel like a job sometimes.
Yeah,
as I'm
just a full-time job.
Right. And I have so much respect for people that do create content. Historically, I'd look at it and go, what is this? Who gives a shit? You're just hanging a video. And then when you try to do it, you're like, this is actually hard, especially if it's of you,
And like actually saying something that you want to represent yourself on the spot, it's like a lot of pressure.
Exactly.
So do you see that these brands like that are led by content creators or have the founders have big personal brands, like is that giving people an edge? Is that like the only way to enter the space now? Or do you think, are there stories like traditional brands popping up?
I don't know that it's definitely not the only way to launch a brand. Do they get an edge? I think that probably in some ways. What I've seen, look, we've worked with different celebrities and influencers with our brand, and not in the way of them being the founder, but them helping us get the message out. I think the brands that are content creator, influencer led are interesting if they have a real brand and a real company behind them. So the mistakes I would say is, and this would happen in alcohol all the time, so-and-so is launching a vodka, so-and-so is launching tequila. No one gives a shit because there are a million tequilas, right? And that person may be cool, but if it's inauthentic, people can see through that now. What I think is really interesting is the people that are living the brand. They're not talking about how many times I need to post or do I want to have this product at this event. They're literally living it. And they have a partner or an infrastructure behind them that knows the business. So, if you were a content creator and you tried to launch a perishable refrigerated beverage, I think you would fail. I think you would fail pretty quick, or it'd be much harder and much more time intense than you would assume. If we were to partner and I was going to take care of all of that back part and you were going to take care of the face of the brand and the awareness and the marketing, I think those are the ones that are really special and succeeding.
Yeah, it seems like much more like a boots on the ground marketing type of business, yeah?
Yeah, there's definitely, I mean, look, Mr. Beast did it, right? I mean, he can put a video out and 100 million people walk into the store asking for it. That's an anomaly.
Yeah, 100 million views per video is not going to be the everyday creator.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess the last question I would ask is, who would you recommend should start this type of business? Like, what characteristics they have, and what are the common mistakes that they might make that they don't see coming?
So a beverage? I mean, I think you have to really have a passion for beverages. I wouldn't have thought of myself or our family in this way for a long time, and now I realize like we're a beverage house, right? We always have different beverages in here. We're always looking, and part of that's because I started things in it. But like, you have to have a passion for beverages. You have to, whether it's alcohol or non-alcohol, you have to have an interest in it. It's not like, I would not suggest someone who just wants an easy layup or a good lifestyle business start this. It is incredibly difficult. Even non-perishable shelf-stable products, incredibly difficult, huge failure rate. But it's exhilarating too. I mean, when you win in beverage, you win. So that's what I'd say about starting. What was the second one?
What mistakes do people make when they enter the space they probably don't see coming?
I think the mistake that's most often made is the one that we made early in Fusion projects, which is you judge success by your sales to a distributor or to a retailer, and you don't realize that the key is the velocity to the consumer. So that's a huge one. The other one is, I think, failing to recognize that the number one single most important attribute of any beverage is taste. You can have the healthiest drink. You can have the thing that checks all the boxes of the modern day, diet or interest, and it doesn't taste good at scale. People are just not going to buy it.
Okay, I do want to ask, what software tools do you all use internally to run the business?
Actually, I want to take one exception to that. I will go back to everything. If it has a function that really works, people will bypass the taste. And Red Bull's a good example of that, right? And there's plenty of others with functional shots. What software do we use? One of my favorite pieces of software, we're a remote company. We've been remote since day one. We were remote for a long time at Fusion. I just like the remote culture. I feel like I can hire the best people regardless of geography. Interesting. And so for me to feel like I'm really in touch with the business and in tune with what's going on, Slack is amazing. The team that's out in the market every day in stores is posting pictures, sharing firsthand feedback. So even though I'm not there personally, I'm still like at that demo getting that firsthand feedback. That's incredibly powerful for me. What other platforms?
It's like a logistics or 3PL or like a universal management of your inventory.
The team would have some. I try not to get too involved in what I'm not good at, and so like warehouse and logistics and production is not my specialty. But I will say that one thing that was game changing for us as a production facility was this program called Red Zone, where we were able to monitor like real time everything that's happening, variances in the product, if this process was done. And so it's really given us a lot of visibility to go back and understand if we had something that tasted off or that spoiled or, whatever it is, we can track every detail of that and know exactly what happened. So that's been good.
Okay. Well, this was a very interesting conversation. I appreciate you making the time.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Where can people find you on LinkedIn?
Just Christopher Hunter.
All right. Well, my man, thank you so much. This is awesome.